Hello and welcome to another episode of How Good Were They, the podcast where we look at football's most famous players and teams and ask how good were they? Today we are looking at one of our own nation's great stars, a legend of the 50s and the 60s, not just in Wales or in England, but even as far as Italy as well. It can only be one man, Il Gigante Buono, John Charles. Thoughts?
Nice pronunciation, firstly.
Thank you. Not bad, not bad.
This is a guy that I think, most football fans, if they're proper into football, have heard of him. But this is a guy that when we talk about the impact he had on our nation, on Wales, but on British football in the 50s and 60s, he's an incredibly important figure. And I think he's maybe a little bit underrated because of the period we're talking about, which is exactly why we're going to consider how good was he.
Absolutely. So, a career that started, well, he's from Swansea originally. Was, I think, in their youth setup for a time.
Yeah, in the late 40s.
Then was scouted by Leeds United, who back then I think were a second division club. I don't think they were quite in the top division just yet. Scouted him as a fantastic player. He's a formidable size already. He's an imposing footballer. His brother also played, Mel Charles, of course. He signs for Leeds. He goes as a 17-year-old, makes his debut. Originally, I think he plays right back first, defence, and then goes into centre back as well. And he becomes an outstanding defender for this team.
Yeah.
And then before long, he gets put up front, and he's as good up front as he is at the back. He ends up scoring a load of goals, playing as a striker, gets promoted with Leeds, becomes the Leeds captain, becomes a real icon of the club. And his status as that fantastic footballer gets spotted by those abroad.
Yeah, and if you watch highlights of him, you watch footage of him, there's a video on YouTube that you can catch some of his best goals. You can just see how imposing he was, the way he played the game. You can see why he was a quality centre-back, but also why he was so talented going forwards too. He had both bits, and in both boxes there, he's going to be someone who's incredibly difficult to deal with for an opposition defence or for a striker who's trying to score against him.
Yeah, so goes to Juventus for a British record, £65,000 at the time, which doesn't sound much today, but that back then it was a lot of money, and it was actually double the previous record, or almost double. So clearly one of Europe's most sought after stars. One of the first to go abroad, isn't he? I mean, there's not many players at that time that had played abroad.
Yeah, totally trailblazing in some ways, particularly for a player this good to go abroad.
Mm-hmm.
He will have had offers, I'm sure, for first division clubs, what we call Premier League now, first division clubs. He doesn't. He moves abroad. He goes to Juventus, the old lady, and a historic football club. Perhaps not as great as they are now when you look back on them, because he played a part in making them great.
Yeah, in the development of Juventus, part of the famous Holy Trinity, they were called, with Omar Savori and Gianpiero Boniperti as well, like a formidable front three in Juventus, which has become gone down in folklore with the club. After that, he goes back to Leeds for I think another over £50,000, and then goes to Roma, goes back to Italy to Roma for £70,000. So his figure goes up as he goes back to Roma. He's not there for long, just 10 games in the league. Then goes to Cardiff City, of course, your club.
Yeah.
He's a legend, even though he's from Swansea.
Yeah.
He's a legend at Cardiff City.
Yeah, and he only plays about 60-odd games, in late 60s games. But again, it's just having a player of that impact and that level, playing for Cardiff in the 60s, it is something that you cling on to. And I think the same for our national team that we'll come on to talk about for Wales, having a player who did this, who was considered so great, back in our history, definitely sort of is someone that everyone who's a Welsh football fan knows, loves, talks about, although obviously hardly any people saw him actually play.
Exactly, and then he finished his career then with a lot of games, 173 league games for Hereford United. Real legend there. I think he gets him promoted up to divisions as well. He's gone down in legendary status with that club as well. Do you want to hear some stats?
Go on, hit me.
Okay, so overall, 592 career games, all competitions.
Incredibly impressive for
back then, absolutely. 284 goals. So strikers back in those days, he played a lot of those games at centre back as well, of course. But strikers back then, they were kind of expected a goal every other game, weren't they? So 1 and 2. So that's a really good record there for that. He also plays only 38 times for Wales in 15 years. So it's a big period of time but just 38 games. Scores 15 goals, so pretty good. A lot of those games would have been in British Home Championships, but of course, some of those games are, of course, in the 1958 World Cup, where until recently it was the only time Wales had qualified for a major tournament. Full stop. He does well in the group stage, and the draw certainly Wales, and they win the playoff against Hungary, and then they have the Brazilian quarterfinal where many believed at the time, had he played, because he was injured for this game, had he played, Wales may have taken that Brazilian team on and, maybe even beaten them.
Welsh folklore will tell you that, had Charles played, we would have won. Who knows? It was only 1-0 to Brazil, and that one goal was scored by Pele.
17-year-old Pele, yeah.
And, God, what a different world we could be in. Say Pele had a terrible game there and John Charles played and scored. Maybe we don't get Pele. This was part of the story for him.
He would have caused problems to their defence. We've watched his clips. Style of play, he is an aggressive centre forward who's still, great feet for a big man. He would have caused any defence in the world problems. And, and Italian defenders back then, Catenaccio was, coming into fruition, wasn't it? Those styles of, those hard centre backs, and he is pushing them out of the way. He is scoring goals. Absolutely outstanding. So over 100 goals for Juventus, over 150 goals for Leeds. Drops down there when he goes to Cardiff City. Let's see, what did he win in his career as well? So a lot of things in the trophy cabinet for John Charles. First thing, he won 3 Serie A's. Pretty good. 2 Welsh Cups for Cardiff City. I mean, the best trophy of all, surely. British Home Championships as well. He won in 1960. And of course, the quarter-final in the World Cup. Okay, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, what we like to do is I like to throw 3 curveballs at Gareth to maybe reassess the legacy of some of these players. Maybe, think, are they as good as we are told they are? Or should they be regarded as better than we're told they are? John Charles, a player for myself, who, I've got to be honest, growing up in Wales, in Cardiff, and having rugby sort of ingrained in us as children, we always had legendary stories of Barry John and Gareth Edwards. Of course, there's a statue in Cardiff, isn't there, of him? We didn't hear much about footballers before Ian Rush and Neville Southall. We heard about Ryan Giggs and then later Gareth Bale. We weren't always told about the 58 team. And it wasn't until really we started doing Football History Boys where I really became truly knowledgeable on John Charles.
Yeah, but I think his fame has risen as Welsh football's risen in this country.
I would agree. Isn't he? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so do you want to hear the first curveball?
Go on then.
Okay. Is there an era bias to him? Would he thrive in modern football? So we know he's a big centre forward, scores lots of goals, he's a trouble, he's good in the air. Would he fit in today? So if he was up against those modern teams, would he be shown up?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because that style of big bruising centre forward perhaps is slightly dropped out of the game a little bit. Watching the video, I was trying to think about who does he look like, who does he play like, and I think he's almost a style in some ways. He's a little bit like Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
That's what I thought as well.
Massive bruising forward who wins headers. And if he wants to get there, he will get there. He's talented, still plays very, very well with the ball at his feet. So perhaps he wouldn't fit in with maybe a Guardiola type side.
No, I don't think so.
But he would definitely find a way in part of football.
He reminds you a bit of Haaland,
Yeah, yes. Yeah, perhaps not as good at running on, but in behind, maybe.
No, yeah. But that size, that big imposing centre.
If he's competing in the air, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. Yeah, I think that's a fair shout as well. He is that style, and you watch him, and you think he would definitely do a job, even if it wasn't style-wise Premier League now. He'd have a massive championship career.
He'd be insane.
Yeah, maybe he's a little bit of a Kiefer Moore then in some ways. Again, if you think of another,
Kiefer Moore. I think Kiefer Moore's got only 1 less goal for Wales than John Charles.
Kiefer Moore is a very good header of the ball, but he's actually pretty decent with the ball at his feet at times, and he's very, very slow and other things that he misses out on, and he comes towards the end of his career, I suppose. But it's that style of actually, if you get the ball into him and you see cross after cross flying into him, he's finishing chance after chance as well. And you said earlier, it's a time where really Italian football wasn't famed for tons of goals. No. He's still scoring a fair amount of goals. And it's that thing, I suppose, again, if you're looking for someone, if you're hanging on to a game, you could stick him back as a centre-back, as another defender. If you're chasing a game, you can push him up front. A bit like Harry Maguire, like Man United last season.
Centre-back, centre-forward, Harry Maguire, of course. Yeah, okay. Right, next one. This may, the curveball may affect his legacy. Lack of visibility. Just don't see enough. We get, the modern players obviously all the time.
Yeah.
Even players like Ronaldo, from the 90s, we see, montages, people always talk about bringing back up again. Baggio, Platini, Van Basten, you see their clips, Cruyff all the time.
Yeah.
Pele. But then someone like John Charles, maybe it's too far back, so we forget it. I mean, we did
too few games on the world stage.
We did Puskas last week, and we've seen the footage of the 53 game, 54 final, and some European Cups for Real Madrid, but we haven't seen enough of him. And maybe the lack of visibility impacts, his true legacy and how good he actually was.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
I think that's probably a fair shout with it. There is there's a good 3-minute highlight reel of him, but it's certainly less than you see of a Pele. And that's going to come with playing less, isn't it? If he played for Juventus now, you'd see him on TV far more. You'd see him in the Club World Cup that's going on. You'd see him in the Champions League. It's almost sort of out of mind in some ways when he goes out to Italian football. They certainly wouldn't follow it in the same way that you would have the chance to do so now. And then only playing 38 times for Wales, only playing in one World Cup. He's going to be less well known because there's going to be less footage of him because the World Cup was the big thing that everyone across the world watched and saw footage of him and saw, this guy's talented. And there's only one World Cup where you've got that, and it's at a time where perhaps it was less well broadcast back in 1958. So I think it's a fair shout.
Yeah, and it's all our knowledge of him now is pretty much second hand, is it? It's secondary. We're getting it from clips. We're getting it from maybe reading it from a newspaper. We're getting it from what other people say about him. We can't really know for sure, and that can you truly put him up there in the top for the GOAT debate if we don't really know?
Yeah.
But what we have heard is pretty good. Right, and the next one. So he didn't play in a World Cup fully fit.
No, and that's one of the trickinesses of him being Welsh for his career, perhaps.
Yes.
That thing of if he was another nationality, even if he was English, dare I say it, he would have played in more World Cups and had more opportunities.
Had he been English, Italian, Brazilian, would he be regarded up there in the top 20 ever? Do you think?
Give him an Italian name. What would that be?
Juan. No, I don't know. Giovanni.
It's hard to.
Giovanni Calito. I don't know.
If he was that, as that old phrase goes.
Calpiero.
Allardyce, Sam Allardyce. Allardyce. If he was foreign, perhaps he would be regarded more highly because actually
Gianluca
Charlio.
Gianluca Charlio. Not bad.
Perhaps we would see more of him in that way. Because what you watch of him, you can't take away his clear ability and talent. You talk about how much he was sold for, huge figures at the time. Massive figures. And the fact that he maintained that resale value, which is something that football clubs talk about a lot now, isn't it? He was able to be resold continually at that very high value.
And for more, back to Roma, yeah.
And to have that at that legendary status at numerous clubs, you don't see that a lot in footballers. Perhaps a footballer stars at a certain club and then they move on and they're never quite as good at the second club, or they break through and then they go and are a talent elsewhere and their career is made at the second club. The fact he is so good for Leeds, so good for Juventus, obviously, and I'm sure we'll come on to some of the things that people say about him there.
Yeah.
And then even Hereford consider him a great. It's crazy how long his career was for a time where he was injury blighted. But yeah, it is a shame that 58 wasn't a fully fit John Charles, because who knows what Wales would have done.
And he's, like you said, he's universally loved everywhere.
Yeah,
everyone loves John Charles.
Yeah,
because he was just a great player and a gentle giant. Gentle giant. Even though he was a bruising centre forward, he had the respect, he had the attitude on the pitch that people just came to respect and love. And I'll see, part of his incredible legacy. So let's have a listen to some quotes from others, what others said about him. So shall we start with Sir Bobby Robson, famous England manager, of course. I think he might have played maybe played against him at first, and then probably managed against him maybe when he was at Hereford. He says he's the best all-round player I've ever seen.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he picked like an all-time 11. I'm pretty sure he put him centre back and centre forward. Or was like I could put him in either of these positions as he was that good in both.
And Bobby Robson is a man again who's sort of universally loved, really.
Absolutely adored, isn't he?
So to have someone like that talk that highly of you is a pretty great statement.
Okay, Giampiero Boniperti, who was part of the Holy Trinity with Charles and Savory, says, we called him Gigante Buono. He was everything a footballer should be. Good quote.
Yeah.
Nice. Can't go much better than that.
Yeah, he was... your Sean Dices or your proper football men, your Richard Keyses would love him. Would love him now if you watch him, because he is sort of that what a centre forward should be type.
Richard Key's a real football man?
He considers himself a real footballer. That sort of style of thing, and Sean Dyche would be all over.
Sean Dyche, he'd be up front for that Burnley side. Tony Pulis would have loved it.
No comparison, Chris Wood.
Chris Wood, he's a bit Chris Wood, isn't he? Yeah. I think that might be one of the best ones. Tony Pulis would have loved him from a long throw in.
Yeah.
Delap to Charles.
Fine. Yeah. But you do watch some of those goals, and he's shooting from outside the box, and he finishes
free kicks as well.
Yeah, free kick, taps one under the wall. So he's clearly a really, really clever footballer for his time too.
Yeah, really good. And finally, Pele. We've always got a Pele quote. He says he was a great man and a great footballer.
Rent a quote, Pele.
Yeah, bit of a simple one with Pele there. He's usually got something a bit better, but not bad. Okay, right, let's think about his legacy then. So, a player that is revered in Leeds, in Cardiff, in Turin, in Wales. He is a real hero, isn't he? Yeah. It would be nice to, I would really love to see. I'd love for FAW to outside Cardiff City Stadium, statue of John Charles, statue of Gareth Bale.
Yeah.
But they, John Charles played for City, didn't he? So and that would go down so well.
Yeah.
Imagine that. It'd be great. They've got the Fred one, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
John Charles statue, and then a Bale one. There has to be a Bale one, doesn't there, as well?
Yeah, and Cardiff fans would be totally for it as well, certainly with John Charles stuff, because he did play for us, but also it would cement that place of Cardiff City Stadium being the home of Welsh football internationally as well.
I mean, you go to the WRU, the Millennium Stadium, and they got a statue of some guy on the board.
Some bloke.
Wasn't didn't even play for them.
Yeah.
And even the Gareth Edwards ones is in St David's Shopping Centre. It's not like for everyone to see.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool statues around Cardiff. And you're surprised yourself. I know he wasn't a Cardiff boy himself, but I'm not aware there's anything marking his legacy where he's from. In Swansea or around that area either. I don't think.
Has he got one in Swansea?
Don't know.
Not sure.
Obviously, he didn't play for them for a club, but he deserves to be marked. There should be a blue plaque. Is there a blue plaque for Charles? We'd have to look into it.
There's not enough blue plaques, is there, for him?
There needs to be a blue plaque.
There's actually a street in Swansea called Alice Street. We might actually go there soon. Where that one road, 5 Welsh football internationals were from.
Wow.
From this around the same time. So obviously John Charles and Mel Charles, but then there's a few others as well who all played for Wales from the same road.
Completely. They push each other on, right? They're street football.
That's mad.
Pushing each other.
And it must be insane games of spot and stuff like that. It must be heads and volleys, incredible. Right. So it says here he was also one of the earliest true complete players. That's a nice thing to think about. A player that had everything, like we heard from I think Boniperti. A player that he could defend, he could attack, he was strong, he was physical, he was good on the ball, he did it all. So that that's an amazing legacy to leave.
What Darwin Núñez should have been for Liverpool.
Don't get started on that. And inducted into the Welsh, English, and Italian football halls of fame.
That's impressive.
3 halls of fame. That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can't beat that. Okay, let's go on to some of your opinions now. See what you guys think about John Charles. So, some of your opinions on John Charles. We have, first of all, Hugh Richards says he was world-class in 2 positions in an era of specialisation, dominated domestic football in a major nation, Italy, where few British players went abroad. With Meredith and Bale, he's among the top 3 Welsh players ever. Weird that Swansea failed to recognise his talent in a productive era, which we mentioned before for me. There you go.
Yeah.
Next one.
Yeah, so here from Paul, in the all-time World 11 at centre-half or centre-forward, but only the second best Welsh player ever. Interesting.
Bale's got that, hasn't he? He's got it down. Warm coat to do lots of music as well. They said at the top of the best players ever in two positions. He's centre forward and centre half. Some might enjoy our ode to the gentle giant Il Gigante Bone, and we'll put a link to it on this podcast. It's a really it's an amazing song they made, featuring clips of John Charles talking, commentators and stuff as well. It's really good. Okay, any more? Let's have a look.
Yeah, one from here from Chris Evans. Bobby Robson was asked to pick his all-time British team. He picked Charles at centre half and centre forward, is what he said.
That's what he said before, isn't it? So there you go. Amazing. And we've also got some lines from Aaron Ramsey, the current Welsh captain, somehow.
Yeah.
So don't think he'll ever play again for Wales. But he went to Juventus, of course. He followed in the footsteps of John Charles.
Yeah, I mean, I got very excited and bought this very shirt here when he signed for Juventus, going, oh, here we go, he's going to emulate John Charles.
He started well, didn't he?
Yeah.
He just really
injuries again.
Standard. Yeah. He said about John Charles, he's an absolute legend over here and for Welsh football. He is definitely someone I can look up to and definitely, hopefully, follow in his footsteps. He definitely took everything in and left his mark here. I know how much he means to this club and the history he contributed here. He's a fantastic player and person I look up to and hope to emulate. Really nice words, but
you didn't quite emulate him. However, I remember when the day Ramsey signed, there was a huge amount, and Juventus themselves put out stuff about him, and it's interesting. As I was talking to someone who went to Malta last week in work, and they were saying how what you say when they go where you're from, Wales, comes up Gareth Bale. In Italy, a thing that will come up is John Charles, obviously Bale, but it's that nature of being from a smaller country, and certainly parts of the world going, Wales, not totally sure where that is. Football is something that unites people in that way, and they totally know that. And for Italians, and if you went to Turin, where Juventus is, and talked to some of the people around there, they would totally be all over that. If you say I'm from Wales, then it'd be John Charles. Straight away, they know it. He is. Was he not voted one of their greatest foreign players of all time?
I think he was voted the greatest foreign player ever in 1997. Bearing in mind, Juventus had Platini.
Yeah.
Three Ballon d'Ors he'd won at Juventus. Zidane had been there at that point. So really good players.
Yeah.
He was voted the best. And we're just looking at a picture. We'll put it up on the video. Del Piero looking at John Charles, an older John Charles, and he clutches his hands to his heart
with love. Yeah.
You are my hero, kind of thing. And that's Del Piero was a proper legend as well. So there we go. Right, last thing to do then. We just need to say where we'd rank John Charles. Where would he be in your all-time Welsh players?
Yeah. The cool thing is to say he's first, isn't it? I think some people would put him there and go because respect your history and how good he was, and he was talented. I think for me he's second behind Gareth Bale. I think a lot of people would say that, and there's obviously a little bit of that recency bias, of course. But Bale was world class, and he sort of followed Charles's path in some ways.
Going
abroad and make a name for himself at Real Madrid. So I think really when you look at it, it's Bale. He's clearly second. They're 1 and 2, 1A and 1B. And it's just the fact that he perhaps didn't play as much for Wales, didn't have as much success.
I think that's it, isn't it? The amount of game time, isn't it?
Yeah, but incredibly impressive man, an incredibly impressive record, and a great Welshman.
Yeah, and also came third in the Ballon d'Or.
Wow.
In 1959. I don't think any other Welsh players have got in the top 3 of the Ballon d'Or.
Been Bale who pushed it the closest, I would have said.
Nominated in 1960, 61 and 62 as well. And that's an era of some, really good players. And he's coming in third, so, it says it all, doesn't it? Okay, where would you put him in your all-time strikers? We'll go to centre-backs. Strikers all-time, where would you go?
It's hard, isn't it? I think you
top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40, 50.
I think he's probably
just strikers.
You're possibly looking at him maybe in the 20s.
Yeah.
Possibly late 20s in terms of best strikers of all time.
Be interesting to list that. Who would go above him?
Yeah, it is hard to say. He's clearly had a very, very, very good goal record. Possibly some of those strikers that make the all-time list would have had more international goals, more international success, or perhaps more, European Cups, things like that to his name. it is an incredibly impressive career, and I don't think we can ever knock him. How good was he? You know, is the name of it.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
All time then. Where did you go? Your all time players.
With the Welsh tint on it, I think I'd always try and sneak him into my all time 11, just because of what he did for our country at a time when we'd been rubbish for years.
Yeah.
We have been.
Years after it as well.
Yeah, exactly. This was a high point in a long series of low points.
Yeah.
And I quite like the story that it's him, is Bale as a modern one, and then someone like a Billy Meredith
Further back
in the 1900s, 1910s.
Absolutely. Okay. I think he maybe make the top 50 footballers of all time. Could be in there. Maybe.
Yeah, you'd see arguments for it. You'd see arguments.
And just before we go, we actually teamed up with your brother to create this amazing print that shows a greatest 11 of all time for Wales. It was voted for by our followers on Twitter, and John Charles, of course, features up front alongside Ian Rush. What a formidable front two. He also went to Juventus as well. Ian Rush.
Yeah, Wales have got a really great history of players going abroad.
Right, if anyone wants to get us to Juventus, you can help us on Buy Me a Coffee. On
if Juventus want to fly us out, fine with us.
No, amazing. We were happy to go to Juventus, Turin, do a documentary on Welsh football.
If you start seeing adverts for Juventus on the podcast, that
Jet to Holidays, I'm sure they'll get us there. Right, brilliant. Okay, you can get a hold of that on Etsy. We'll leave a link to it in the description below on our Spotify and our YouTube. You can, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel at TFHBS. You can watch it on there as well. Our Spotify, you follow us on there. We've had a lot of new followers recently, which has been brilliant. You can listen to the backlog now of this podcast. We've got to Puskas, Brazil 82, Van Basten and Maldini. You can follow us on Instagram at Football History Boys and TikTok at the Football History Boys as well. All good.
Yeah, I think we said we wanted to keep it to half-hour, short, snappy episodes you can listen to quickly, but you can sort of delve into those sort of deeper football conversations.
And comment below who we should do next, who we should look at next. Fantastic. If that's everything.
Yeah, great.
We'll see you again for another one very soon.